Welcome to the world of rare disease, a show that focuses on awareness and education about rare and complex disorders. My name is Lisa Deck. I'm a rare disease patient, a Rare New England board member, and your host for today's show. Today, our show features Miguel Sancho and Felicia Morton. Both are parents to two children, Lydia and Sebastian. Sebastian is a rare disease patient who was born with CGD. Miguel has recently written a book, More Than You Can Handle, detailing a rare disease, a family in crisis, and the cutting edge medicine that cured the incurable. Today, Miguel and Felicia will talk about their book and the many decisions involved in their rare disease journey. We're thrilled to have the two of you here today. Welcome. Thank you for being with us, Felicia and Miguel. I'm happy to have you here today. So I want to jump right in and talk about your book. Miguel, you just recently wrote and published a book. So I'd love for you to tell us about it.
Sure. Thank you again for having us. The book is called More Than You Can Handle, A Rare Disease, a Family in Crisis, and the Cutting Edge Medicine that Cured the Incurable. And essentially, the book is meant to kind of give people a peek into what it's like for a family that's kind of struck and upended by a rare disease diagnosis, the kind of havoc that can wreak on a family, and the ways that people can deal with it and cope, and often do cope. And it kind of tracks our journey with our son Sebastian, who was diagnosed in 2012 with a rare immune deficiency disease. And it kind of gives a journey through what happened during the diagnostic phase of the ordeal, how we tried to manage it for a number of years, and how we end up getting him cured, which is a great happy ending, but involved one of the most intense, painful, and risky medical interventions one can undertake, which is a bone marrow transplant, commonly known. In our specific case, it was a stem cell transplant using unrelated umbilical cord blood.
Right. So Felicia, can you tell me briefly, and it's definitely not a brief story, but what is CGD and how did that impact Sebastian's life prior to the transplant?
Yes, well, CGD stands for chronic granulomatosis disease. It's a rare inherited primary immune deficiency. It's a genetic mutation, and apparently, unbeknownst to me, I am a carrier. And we did not know Sebastian was born with it. Around 6 weeks old, he started having strange, prolonged fevers with no detected origin that the doctors, could find. And also then he developed cysts with infections that needed an incision and drainage in the hospital. So we were in and out of the emergency room. And while our pediatrician and other doctors said, well, some children just experience this, I was determined to find an answer. And having a background in healthcare public relations, I had worked on several rare diseases before, and I just knew to go to an immunologist. And so I insisted that we do that. And thankfully, our immunologist had diagnosed him with chronic granulomatosis disease. It affects only 1 out of 200,000 births in the US per year, so it's extremely rare. And what it means is that he cannot fight a handful of bacteria and or a particular type of fungus called Aspergillus fungus. And so it's because he has neutrophils. His white blood cells do not function properly. And so because of that, he needed to take standard prophylaxis to manage his disease every day. The immunologist told us he would be dealing with infections for his entire life. On average of once every 3.5 years, we could expect a life-threatening infection. He would probably have a shortened lifespan. They said at the time he might not live past 30 or 40. And the only cure would be a bone marrow transplant.
Wow. So that is, a lot to digest, a lot to figure out, a lot to deal with day to day. And that's, ultimately, Miguel, that's why you thought, let's write this down, let's share it. And what was your goal for the book? Like, what was that one thing the main message, and I think it's probably told in the title, but I'd love to hear kind of a little bit more of what you meant to accomplish with the book.
Well, I think a lot of people, including myself, find themselves in situations where they don't necessarily have experience being tested and challenged and confronted brutally with it could be a diagnosis, or it could be any other life-altering event. And it's a big assumption to just assume that we're all resilient and have the fortitude and the stamina and the strength and the equanimity to handle and assimilate these kinds of events. And that certainly wasn't the case with me. I hadn't grown up particularly pampered, but I certainly hadn't had any kind of major trauma or crisis in my life up to this point. And it really threw me for a loop. And it impacted my work, it impacted my friendships, it impacted my family, it impacted, just my mental health in a lot of really challenging ways. And it forced me to kind of confront those problems that, maybe pre-existing problems that I had been able to kind of paper over, but that something like this will just expose. And I think that's important for people to kind of be able to address and confront.
Yeah, that's really brave to kind of, I think it's brave to face a rare disease diagnosis, right? I mean, your child has this. And so everybody has a different way of coping and a different way of handling it. And, even in talking to both of you, you've had kind of different routes that you've taken. And then talking about it, it's hard to talk about. And sometimes, you look on articles and different things, and it talks about how strong everybody is. And I think some people do that. And then there's some people who are very realistic with, how they were feeling. And that's important too. So I think it's interesting to kind of address that in a book.
Well, I would say also very briefly that, it's one of those things where you're dealing with, in our case, a child with an illness. You have responsibilities. You have, things that you need to do. In fact, your responsibilities go up considerably while your ability to cope might be going down at the same time. So it's a real dilemma for a lot of folks. Mm-hmm. And the point of the book was kind of to address that head on and not just assume that everybody's able to just automatically rise to the occasion.
Right.
But also it was among other things, it wasn't just about me. It really was a Valentine and a thank you note, an extended thank you note to all this wonderful community of nurses and doctors and other patients and other families and the researchers who are doing these amazing things that are able to transform lives and achieve these amazing medical breakthroughs and medical outcomes that even just a few years ago weren't even on the horizon.
Right. Well, great. I have not had a chance to read it yet. I look forward to reading it. Another thing I know that we spoke about was decisions. And I think I'm going to pass this to you, Felicia, because you were talking about how there's so many decisions to make when it comes to living either with rare disease yourself or with a child. So can you give an example of, some of those decisions that you as an individual and as a family, you had to grapple with?
Yes. And to just pick up where Miguel left off and to use that as a platform, it's true that some of us are not equipped and some of us may be tailor-made for this. In my case, I had a constellation, let's say, of different skills, different things in my background that enabled me to make decisions. And it turned out to be something that I could handle through the grace of God. I had been raised in a family with faith, and not to say that I was a big churchgoer in my 20s, but there was a reservoir that I could tap into, thankfully, because of the peace and that environment in which I had shared in my church community with my family as well as those who attended our church in Chicago. And that was number one. Number two, I had a background in healthcare public relations. I had worked on rare disease and promoting various innovative treatments and talking to doctors. And I had a background also in journalism. And so I had a background in research. So I was able to put all of those things together and help advocate for my son and make decisions that were measured, educated, well-researched decisions based on anecdotal evidence, which is really important, talking to other moms, interviewing them, asking them, the tough questions, developing that relationship so that they could open up to me about what it's really like to have a child with CGD, talking to doctors, asking them the questions about what is their success rate, what is their methodology, what is their protocol, going into the research, being able to go into peer-reviewed published journals and talking to the doctors about evidence and conclusions and how that relates to my son. All those things together are things I had done in my professional career, and I was able to bring that to bear with my son. And so that was what enabled us to make a decision. Going through that process with CGD moms and talking to centers of excellence for CGD, not just the hospital closest to us, but the places that had very strong experience in our particular rare disease and a good success rate as well.
Right. So that is a major decision. And I think every major decision comes with a lot of little decisions. And I just wondered if you guys wanted to touch upon kind of family relationships. I know you've mentioned your daughter and kind of what are some of the decisions and thoughts that you had when it came to having both children, making decisions for Sebastian that, of course, impacted both of you and Lydia. I think that's something too that not everybody recognizes as part of the process.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people will be able to relate to this just because of the COVID crisis, right? When the COVID crisis hit, every family had a lot of decisions to make about their own risk tolerance, about their own daily lives, about their social activities. So imagine that happening, every day for 6 years. And presumably for the length of patient's life when they're dealing with an immune deficiency. So, and also when you're dealing with rare disease, by definition, the disease is rare. So there aren't a lot of patients to study. So even the best experts in the world don't have a lot of data from which to call and make informed decisions. It's not like lung cancer or high blood pressure or something where there are literally millions of patients from which you can do longitudinal studies in various cohorts and populations. So even the experts have a tough time making decisions. And this is something that Felicia and I encountered numerous times when we talked to some of the best doctors in the world. So what should we do? What are you saying? What's the best way to go? And they were very circumspect. And they kind of laid out for us kind of the pros and cons, but it was always a very elliptical, kind of Delphic Oracle kind of answer that just added to the pressure.
I think she was asking also about siblings. And in this area, they're very clear. A lot of research shows that it's better if the siblings are there. So if you do have to move to a center of excellence, if you have a rare disease, the question often becomes, should I bring the siblings? Won't it be easier if one parent goes with the child who has the disease and we leave the siblings at home with another caregiver and don't group them, keep them in their routine and in their school? Actually, every researcher, every clinician with whom we spoke said that is the wrong thing to do. It's really important to bring the siblings with you to the place where the child is going to undergo that procedure so they can be a part of it. So you can stay a family unit. So that child will not feel that they've been neglected. As much as you're trying to preserve that child and keep them safe and make sure that they're not exposed to things that could traumatize them, all those things that parents consider, it actually will backfire because children don't understand that. They just feel that they don't have their moms and dads, or they don't have their mommy, or they don't have the parent who's with the child, at another location. and resentment will grow, unfortunately. So the most important thing is to keep the family together if at all possible. So that's one of the decisions that we made as well, to make sure that Lydia, Sebastian's older sister, was able to join us in North Carolina and be a part of it. We put her in a school there and just developed a life for her in North Carolina. And she credits North Carolina with one of the happiest times of her life. She wants to actually move there. So, this is a success story on many fronts. Not to say that she isn't scarred by what she went through, even with everything that we did. We still feel that, we still know that she feels that some resentment, some feeling that Sebastian had more of our attention. There was nothing we could have done differently. But we do hope and pray that was lessened. That feeling was not as acute as it could have been.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
I do want to just second that. Yes, there were a lot of things that were kind of left gray, but on that particular point, yes, the path forward was pretty unequivocal.
right.
And we hemmed and hawed about that a little bit, or at least I did. But ultimately, we made that call, and it was wonderful. And you see, particularly in the transplant unit where we were, which was this hermetically sealed environment, you see the doctors, often say, bring in the sibling to kind of keep the patient engaged and happy and positive. And we saw that over and over again with not just our family, but with others.
Right. Wow. So yeah, I mean, medical decisions, family decisions, emotional decisions. I mean, they just keep coming. So yeah, so I think it's so, I'm very glad that we brought up the idea of decisions and how challenging they can be, because of course decisions are in general hard, but then when you add the complexity of this to it, it's even more difficult. And I do think COVID has kind of opened many people's eyes to the plight of illness and patients who can't go out, can't, engage with others. And I'm hopeful that brings some more understanding and kindness as well. I wanted to shift gears just a little bit. Clinical trials. I know when you're talking about something that's so cutting edge, that, research and kind of all these things have to come together to develop this. And I know that clinical trials is something that you all have talked about before.
Right. Well, I believe, we were blessed in many ways, and we were given so much. By definition, a transplant of stem cells involves a donor, right? There's somebody who's giving part of their body or cells so that someone else can live that they don't even know. There are all the people who helped us kind of financially at various points in the thing. There are all these people who have given their lives to studying these diseases and these cures. So participating in a clinical trial for us, and we had many along the way, studies that Sebastian was encouraged to join, or we were encouraged to sign Sebastian up for. We considered it kind of a way of giving back, right? When you're dealing with a rare disease in particular, the studies are the way that, an organization, be it the National Institutes of Health or a given hospital or university, can map the broadest possible phenotype of the disease, can figure out exactly how it works, and then work towards the best ways of and the most tailored ways of treating it. So for us, it was kind of a duty, kind of an honor to be able to participate in these trials. I would also say I'm a big advocate of kind of loosening restrictions when it comes to compassionate use of experimental medications. I ultimately think, again, I haven't researched this as much as other people have, but just coming from our perspective, when you're dealing with patients who have rare diseases and who might die from them, it's my kind of ethical position that, they own their bodies, we own our bodies, and we should be able to adjudicate the risks involved with experimental medicines and protocols on our own.
Right. So we just talked about that, and I know, Felicia, you do some work with an organization. So I'd love for you to tell our viewers what that organization is and where they can go to find more information, because that's where education and awareness and information is provided.
Yes. as we said, with CGD, it's different than other diseases, because with other diseases, there's more of a prescribed path where you know what to do, what the doctors will tell you what you need to do. With CGD, you can either live with prophylaxis, with managing disease with medication, or you can explore curative options. And so because the burden of the decision of that decision is on the patients or the families, our organization, the CGD Association of America, our mission is to ensure that patients have access to clear and unbiased information so that they can be educated in order to make those decisions for themselves or for their families. And we also advocate for carriers of X-linked CGD who were previously thought to be asymptomatic, and now new research is showing that female carriers also can present with symptoms that are either autoimmune systems or symptoms of CGD themselves, depending on the level of severity. And so we're working together with several research organizations to put new research out regarding carriers as well, so that we can take care of our women and girls, and as well as the boys and men.
Excellent. And what is the website for your organization?
It's cgdaa.org.
Excellent. So for people who want to learn more about CGD and immune deficiency and what work is being done, that's a great place to go. And Miguel, I'd love for you to tell all of our viewers where you can find your book, and any final last words.
Oh, well, again, thank you for having us, and thank you everybody out there for listening. I hope it was worth your attention. Well, the book is available on Amazon.com. Again, it's called More Than You Can Handle. If you just Google that, it should pop. You can also go to my website, which is www.miguelsancho.net. It's also on Barnes & Noble, and it should be in quality bookstores everywhere. So I will say this about the book. You know, I'm somebody who doesn't finish a lot of books that I start. So when I wrote the thing, I wrote, even though it's about us and we are inclined to think that everything happens to us is fascinating, I was very conscientious of the fact that it's my responsibility and it's the book's responsibility to hold the reader's attention, to entertain the reader, to make sure that we earn their attention and their time to get to the end. So, you know, I'm a television producer by profession, and I have a short attention span. So if you're like me, this book is catered to your capacity for distraction and boredom.
Excellent. Well, I have to say that it has been a pleasure to speak with both of you. You know, your story is one of hope, and I hope that, you know, sharing it here brings this book and your experiences to others. I definitely know I do have a short attention span, but I'm a reader, so I'm very excited to read the book. And you two are a dynamic couple and an awesome family. So thank you for being here today. It really has been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, and thank you again to your audience.
Yes, thank you.
Before closing, we provide our viewers with an opportunity to share comments and ask questions from our prior shows. Rare New England in Motion is the perfect way to expand upon our mission of engaging with our community. If you have questions and comments, please reach out to Rare New England at info@rarenewengland.org. Our show would not be possible without the generous sponsors that sponsor our show. This includes Pfizer, Ultragenics, Vertex, Horizon, and the law offices of Weiner, Jackson, and Simmons. Thank you for your continued support. We are always looking for other sponsors and guests, so please reach out with any inquiries. Thank you again, Felicia and Miguel, for being here today. It was a pleasure. From all of us at Rare New England and all the patients and families who keep rare disease in motion, thank you for watching. And remember, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, and then think zebras. Thank you.